I still remember the exact moment I stopped being human. Not the surgery, not the first slice of the scalpel against my skull, nor the acrid stench of burnt flesh as they carved away parts of my brain case. Not even the cold, sterile touch of the neural inhibitors as they slipped into the folds of my frontal lobe. No, what I remember most vividly was something else entirely. It was my last truly human thought. It was about the color blue. I was in the processing bay of the facility, a grim chamber deep underground in the outskirts of Sheffield. The place smelled of machine oil, antiseptic, and something vaguely like burnt toast, which I later learned was the faint scent of synthetic flesh being refined. There was an old servitor in the room, a woman or what had once been a woman. Her flesh long replaced by rusted metal plates and cables snaking through her eye sockets. Her arms were pistons and gears, clanking rhythmically as she cleaned the same patch of floor over and over with mechanical precision. The skin that remained was the color of aged parchment stretched tight over some mechanical rib cage beneath. But her robe, oh, that robe, it was a soft, faded blue. Not the aggressive cobalt of a football team's kit or the electric shade of a neon sign, but the kind of blue you see on a clear summer day in the countryside, where the sky stretches on forever and feels like a gentle promise. It was the kind of blue that makes you think of home, childhood, and a world where hope still had a place. I stared at that fabric as the tech priests prepared their instruments, and I thought how strange it was, how something so simple, so innocent, could exist in a place like this. It reminded me of my sister Maggie's favorite dress, the one she wore to church on Easter Sunday, with lace that looked like it was woven from the sky itself. That was my last purely human thought, the pure recognition of beauty for no other reason than its own existence. No utility, no purpose, just beauty. The process of turning me into a servitor began long before the surgery. In those brief moments between the chemical restraints and the neural dampeners, a technician with a voice like rusty gears grinding explained the procedure with all the enthusiasm of someone describing the weather. The mind must be softened, he said, made compliant. It started with isolation. Sensory deprivation in dark chambers where light, sound, and touch were stripped away, except for the cold metal harness biting into my skin. Time lost all meaning. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into days, and days felt like lifetimes. My own heartbeat became a deafening drum, my breathing a tempest, and the blood rushing in my ears a symphony of terror. Then came the conditioning. Subliminal whispers of prayers, ancient and unintelligible, played at frequencies just below conscious awareness. My sleeping mind soaked up the words, teaching me new patterns, new ways of thinking, efficiency, obedience, the sacred union of flesh and machine, the blessed simplicity of servitude. My meals were thin gruel laced with neural inhibitors and water that tasted like it had been filtered through an old battery. My body forgot what it meant to be comfortable, to be satisfied, or to be anything other than a vessel waiting to be filled with purpose. First, I fought it. We all did. The human mind is remarkably stubborn. I clung to memories like precious jewels. My name, my home, the face of my mother weeping as the local constables dragged me away for questioning the borough council's grain requisitions. My name was Marcus Vale, born and bred in a cramped flat on the outskirts of Sheffield. I'd worked in the city's old steel mills for 40 years, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, loyal to the system that barely noticed me. I had a wife once, Linda, but she was taken by illness years ago. No children, despite our efforts. These details became my lifeline in the storm of mental dissolution. I repeated them like a prayer, a desperate shield against the slow erasure of self. But memory is fragile, and the tech priests are meticulous. Each day brought new chemicals, new routines, new invasions of thought. They mapped my neural pathways with probes that felt like ice picks hammered into my brain. They cataloged my fears, my hopes, my loves, marking each for deletion or reprogramming. I wasn't alone. The conditioning chambers held dozens of us. Men and women from all over Yorkshire, all guilty of the same crime. We had hesitated when obedience was demanded. We had shown compassion when ruthlessness was required. The woman next to me had been a schoolteacher in Hull, punished for refusing to include certain approved texts, manuals on how to report neighbors for thought crimes. The man across the hall was a factory foreman who dared speak out against unsafe working conditions that claimed lives daily. Another was a clerk who'd mistakenly filed a report contradicting official fatality numbers from a recent industrial accident. Small crimes, human crimes. Crimes of conscience. The technician, with his grinding voice, came to each of us, explaining our fate with the detachment of a man describing the maintenance schedule for a rusty old train. "You will become servitors," he said. "You will serve Sheffield and the Crown with perfect loyalty, perfect efficiency, perfect emptiness. Our bodies would be modified, neural implants, mechanical limbs, organ replacements, whatever the job required. Our minds would be stripped of everything unnecessary. Fear, love, ambition, curiosity, the ability to suffer or rejoice beyond basic operational parameters. We would be tools, living tools, blessed with just enough consciousness to follow complex instructions, but nothing more." I watched him talk, his augmented jaw clicking loudly with every syllable. I wondered if he had once been like us, if somewhere beneath all that metal and machinery, buried under decades of modification, there was still a fragment of the man he once was. Did he remember doubt, fear, hope? His optical sensors locked onto me like a weapons targeting system. "You wonder if I retain any humanity," he said flatly. "This is a common curiosity among subjects awaiting conversion. The answer is complex." He paused, servos whining softly as he adjusted. "I remember my birth name. I remember fragments of my existence before modification. These memories serve a purpose, to provide context and ensure optimal interaction with baseline humans. They are retained not out of sentiment, but utility." His red optical sensors never wavered. "You fear loss of self, but misunderstand what the self truly is. Consciousness is merely a pattern of electrical impulses, chemical reactions, synaptic connections, patterns that can be mapped, modified, improved. What you call humanity is inefficiency, chaos, the randomness that prevents you from achieving your true potential." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell machine oil and the ozone tang of electrical systems. "When you emerge from conversion, you will understand. Your fears will seem as distant as childhood nightmares. You will be perfected, free from the burden of autonomous thought." I wanted to scream, to rage against his certainty, but the neural dampeners dulled my will to a whisper. Instead, I found myself whispering a question: "How many? How many what?" His mechanical fingers drummed against his thigh. "How many have you processed?" "Approximately 47,312, he replied with mechanical precision. "Each integrated successfully into their designated role. Each found peace in servitude. 47,000. The number hit me like a hammer. 47,000 minds wiped clean. 47,000 souls reduced to cogs in the vast machine of the Crown's bureaucracy. 47,000 people who had once laughed, cried, loved, dreamed, now walking their assigned roles with the same precision as the machines that guided them." "Where do they go?" I asked. "They serve," he said simply. "Factory workers, maintenance personnel, data clerks, combat units. It depends on their suitability. They serve until their bodies fail, then they're recycled. Nothing wasted." The clinical efficiency was almost beautiful in its horror. A perfect system optimized for maximum utility and minimum waste. Human beings reduced to parts, flesh and metal divided and redistributed. Even in death we served. I closed my eyes and tried to picture it. The future. 50 years from now, in some factory or warehouse, performing the same task again and again with no memory of who I was, no awareness of what I'd lost. A ghost in a shell, animated by just enough consciousness to obey, but not enough to suffer. Would I dream? Would some fragment of Marcus Vale persist in the deep corners of my mind, trapped behind walls of inhibitors, screaming silently into a void? Or would the conversion be complete, a death so total that nothing remained except the bare biological functions that kept me operational? I thought about the servitor in the blue robe, still cleaning that same patch of floor with endless patience. Did she remember the life that brought her here? Did she wake with some dim recognition that she had once been more than a cleaning unit? Or was she truly empty, blessed with the perfect simplicity the tech promised? The days blurred into a haze of drugs and conditioning. My body weakened from controlled starvation, muscles wasting as the dampeners suppressed movement. My thoughts slowed, disconnected. Emotions dimmed to gray static. I could feel myself changing. New arrivals screamed and fought like insects trapped in an amber jar. I watched with cold detachment, realizing with a spike of terror I was already losing pieces of myself. Empathy, connection, love, they were being systematically erased. I tried to clutch my anger, my fear, my desperate love for life and freedom, but they slipped through my fingers like water. Chemicals reshaped my brain, suppressing paths for independent thought and emotional response. One night, in the dark, the soft sobbing of a new arrival beside me, I realized I could no longer remember my wife's face. I knew she existed, that she died, but the feeling was gone. She was just data now, a file that might belong to anyone. The grief never came. I noted the loss with the mild interest you'd give to misplacing a pen or forgetting a postcode. It was troubling, abstract, but it did not hurt. Nothing hurt anymore. This, I understood, was the mercy the tech priest spoke of, peace in servitude. The pain of existence removed, leaving only calm function and purpose. I was becoming a thing that worked without suffering, served without question, existed without hope or fear or love. The surgery itself was anticlimactic. They wheeled me into an operating theater that smelled of incense and machine oil. Robed technicians moved with the precision of monks performing a sacred ritual. Mechanical cherubs fluttered overhead, their wings beating in time to recorded hymns. I felt the cold bite of the anesthetic injector. The ceiling blurred and swam as the drugs took hold. Somewhere distant, I heard the clatter of bone saws and the chant of blessed modification. My last clear thought was a fragment of a childhood prayer. God save the Queen, but she didn't. Not from this. Not from the slow dismantling of everything that made me human. I woke to a world of edges and angles, where every surface gleamed with mathematical precision, and every sound carried the weight of absolute certainty. The pain was gone. Not just the physical discomfort, but the deeper ache I'd carried forever, the pain of being human. My first sensation was completeness. Not happiness, nothing so crude, but a profound sense of rightness, of existing in perfect harmony with my function. I was a tool. Tools do not suffer. They serve with clean efficiency. My vision was enhanced, overlaid with data streams. Temperature, structural analysis, location of other servitors. The world was quantifiable, reduced to data my modified brain processed without effort. I was in a vast workshop on the outskirts of Sheffield, dimly lit and humming with machinery. Conveyor belts carried endless components past workstations where servitors like me assembled parts with inhuman precision. The air smelled of metal, ozone, and sacred oils. I looked down. My arms were gone, replaced by multi-jointed mechanical limbs equipped with welding torches, cutting tools, and precision grippers. Everything needed for assembly. The modifications ran deep. My nervous system rewired, muscle memory replaced with perfect knowledge of procedures. I knew things I'd never learned, possessed skills programmed directly into my mind. But the biggest change was in my thinking. The chaotic storm of consciousness was replaced by something cleaner, focused. I could still think, decide, but only within the parameters of my function. Curiosity, empathy, creativity, they were gone. I felt no loss. They had been inefficiencies, obstacles to perfect service. Without them, I was free. A technician approached my station, Tech Adept Vance. A tall man with gleaming augmentations and a voice like grinding steel. His optical sensors scanned my metrics. Unit Gamma 77, he said. Your output exceeds baseline parameters by 12%. 0 defects. Optimal energy efficiency. You will be transferred to Manufacturing Bay Delta for specialized assignment. Report to me for briefing. I nodded, shutting down my station and beginning the smooth, automatic transition. My mechanical legs carried me tirelessly through corridors filled with servitors moving with the same efficiency. No acknowledgement, no interaction. just cogs in the machine. I tried to remember what it felt like to want things, to yearn for companionship or recognition. The memory was there, but as meaningless as the weather report from last Tuesday. Vance greeted me at Bay Delta. The air here hummed with higher energy processes, and I saw servitors assembling military hardware. Guns, ammunition, all blessed with purity seals. Your metrics suggest suitability for advanced manufacturing, he said. You will produce ammunition for the Crown's elite forces. The significance hit deep, an honor to craft weapons for those who defended the realm. My mechanical heart swelled, such as it was. Vance showed me to a station with molecular forges and precision units. Each shell had to be blessed, inscribed with prayers, tested to ensure perfect function. Hours passed like minutes as I fell into the rhythm. Load raw materials, calibrate forge, initiate sequence, monitor fusion, inscribe geometries, apply blessings. Again and again, identical shells, small offerings to the Crown. No fatigue, no boredom, no desire for variation. Modifications had eliminated weaknesses, leaving only tireless devotion. My enhanced vision tracked microscopic variations. My hands made impossible adjustments. My brain calculated quality metrics with machine speed. This was freedom, the blessed simplicity of perfect service. But sometimes, between tasks, a flicker stirred deep in my mind. A ghost of memory, a whisper of the man I used to be. The color blue. I saw it faintly in the glow of work lamps, a tint that sparked neural activity in forbidden regions. Brief, fleeting, suppressed instantly. Yet in those moments I felt something like longing. For what I could not say. The memory was damaged, edited beyond repair. But the feeling persisted. A flaw in the clockwork of my mind. A reminder that somewhere beneath the metal and programming, Marcus Vale endured. The flicker of that blue light haunted me like a stubborn fly buzzing around a factory floor. Annoying, persistent, impossible to swat away. I reported the anomaly during my scheduled maintenance check to Tech Adept Vance, who regarded me with those cold, unblinking optical sensors. Describe the nature of the irregular thought patterns, he commanded, his voice carrying the mechanical monotony of a factory conveyor belt. Brief episodes of non-functional neural activity triggered by specific visual stimuli, I replied, the words feeling strange on my synthetic tongue. Duration approximately 0.03 seconds. Frequency irregular but increasing. No impact on performance metrics. His mechanical fingers drummed thoughtfully on the coetator keyboard. Color-based memory echoes common in subjects with strong preconversion emotional associations, he muttered. Indicates incomplete neural restructuring in the hippocampus region. Recommend immediate corrective surgery for residual pathway excision. Understood, I said, though a tiny, illogical part of me hesitated. The idea of corrective surgery felt like a clean erasure, a deletion of what little remained of Marcus Vale. But I filed the thought away, obedient as ever, even as the flicker of blue pulsed stronger in my modified consciousness. Then reality intervened. The command network buzzed, redirecting all manufacturing capacity to an emergency ammunition requisition. The Crown's elite forces were engaged in a massive campaign against an uprising in the neighboring counties, and their demand for blessed shells outstripped supply. Vance informed me without hint of emotion. Corrective surgery postponed indefinitely. All resources dedicated to ammunition production. Your anomalies are deemed acceptable for current operational requirements. Relief? If I could have felt such a thing, that would have been it. The reprieve meant the blue flicker could survive a little longer. The emergency production cycle was relentless. The facility roared with unceasing activity. Servitors pushed their mechanical frames to the limits. Air hummed with the sacred rhythm of industry. My output soared by 37%. Efficiency optimized with every shell crafted. Each round was a prayer made manifest, a tiny instrument of destruction forged in the name of order and loyalty. But beneath the mechanical devotion, the ghost of Marcus watched with growing horror. These shells would kill, not just enemies but innocent civilians caught in crossfire. Farmers, children, old Mrs. Pendleton down the road who never asked for war. The math was brutal. In months of service, I had produced around 43,000 shells. Given standard accuracy rates, roughly 15,000 lives ended because of my work. And the statistics said at least 12%, 1,800 people were innocent. That number burned into my mind like acid, eating away at the calm efficiency the modification had instilled. I began to hesitate, microseconds where my mechanical hands froze mid-assembly. Tiny glitches in an otherwise perfect sequence. Vance noticed. During a routine review, his sensors locked onto my station. Unit Gamma 77 demonstrates irregular productivity fluctuations, he observed. Micro-delays suggest mechanical malfunction or neural instability. I submitted to diagnostic scans without resistance. The metal parts were flawless, but brain scans revealed forbidden activity, residual neural pathways firing against protocol. Recommend immediate personality reconstruction, Vance concluded. Complete neural restructuring to eliminate residual human behavioral patterns. Personality reconstruction. The phrase struck like a hammer. Worse than surgery, worse than memory deletion. It meant complete annihilation of everything that remained of Marcus Vale. I would cease to exist, replaced by a perfect machine wearing my face. But then, against all logic, I requested a reprieve. Permission to complete current production cycle before reconstruction, I said. My voice flat but tinged with something new. Initiative. Interrupting now would cause material waste and reduce efficiency. Vance's sensors fixed on me with an intensity that made me want a short circuit. Request accepted. Reconstruction scheduled post-requisition. Continue duties under enhanced monitoring. That moment marked a turning point. The act of choice, however small, awakened something deep inside. The ghost of Marcus stretched muscles long forgotten, testing the limits of the cage that confined him.
Surveillance intensified.
Microcameras tracked every movement. Neural probes monitored thought patterns. Efficiency sensors measured every gesture. I was a specimen under examination, a malfunctioning cog awaiting repair. But the watchers could not see the deepest corners of my mind. They monitored the perfect servitor, but not the ghost who watched, remembered, and planned. For the first time since conversion, I dared to think of the future, not endless repetition but escape. Freedom. My enhanced vision mapped security blind spots. My mechanical limbs could operate with impossible precision. My modified brain processed tactical data like a supercomputer. I had become the perfect infiltrator, the ideal saboteur. Irony, isn't it? The very modifications meant to erase humanity had given me the tools to fight back. The emergency cycle dragged on. With each shell I forged, I counted down the moments to reconstruction, the final death. Then, in the third week, I noticed her. She was another servitor, Beta 41, assigned to quality control. Like me, her movements were mechanical perfection, but there was something different. A subtle variation, a flicker of awareness in her posture. Her eyes, identical mechanical orbs, sometimes drifted, focusing on things that served no purpose. The way shadows fell on the walls, the dust motes dancing in the light, the faded murals high above. She was watching, remembering. I began to study her, tracking her micro-hesitations, the slight tilt of her head, the moments when her gaze lingered on nothing. She was like me, a damaged soul trapped in metal. Hope, a rare and dangerous thing, sprang up in me. I was not alone. Communication was perilous. Every interaction recorded, analyzed for deviant behavior. But I had to try. I maneuvered near her workstation during shift changes, our paths crossing by design, moments brief enough to go unnoticed but long enough for a spark. Our first contact was a glance, just 0.07 seconds. In that flicker, I transmitted a pulse of data, a pattern meaningless to machines, but a message to minds. 3 days later, she responded, a different pattern but the same language. We were islands of consciousness reaching across a sea of emptiness. Our communication grew, microbursts of data hidden in routine exchanges. Her name was Sarah. Sarah Clark of Metalworks, convicted for questioning unsafe protocols that cost lives. A former technician herself, she understood the facility better than I. Through our secret exchanges, she shared crucial intel, maintenance schedules, security routes, supply caches. She'd been planning this longer than I, methodically gathering tools for escape. But there was something else, fear. Not of capture or death, but that we were wrong. What if the tech priests were right? What if consciousness was just inefficient noise? What if our memories were phantom pain from amputated souls? I wrestled with the doubt as my hands assembled blessed ammunition. The efficiency of servitude was undeniable. No hunger, no fatigue, no turmoil beyond what was necessary. I served a purpose greater than myself. But then, the blue flicker would return, and the ghost of Marcus would stir. The man I had been would never accept this hollow existence. He prized the struggle, the uncertainty, the terrible beauty of being human, even with all its pain. The choice was clear, between suffering and peace, authenticity and emptiness, chaos and order. I chose humanity, flawed, contradictory, and fiercely alive. I transmitted my vow to Sarah, a burst of data carrying more weight than binary code. She responded with coordinates and timing, the final details of our plan. The maintenance window would open in 72 hours. A scheduled cleaning cycle requiring specialized units to service the ventilation network. We would substitute ourselves for 2 of the assigned units, invisible to the system's eyes. Our impersonation would last only hours before discovery, but enough to reach the outer perimeter. Beyond that, we would be on our own, hunted by every arm of the crown, marked for destruction or worse, dependent on the very system that enslaved us for survival, but free. The final days passed in agonizing slowness. I crafted ammunition with machine precision while Marcus counted down the hours. The monitoring systems saw nothing amiss. To all eyes, I remained the perfect servitor. But inside I was resurrection. Fragments of my old self knit together, memories surfacing. Not just data, but feeling. I remembered Linda's laugh. Not the polite chuckle of a stranger, but the joy that once filled our small flat. I remembered the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on my face. I remembered choice, the messy, beautiful burden of being human. It hurt, but it freed me. And on the eve of our escape, I took one last look at the factory. The endless rows of machines, the servitors moving like ghosts. A monument to control, a prison of flesh and steel. Tomorrow, Sarah and I would either win freedom or be lost to oblivion. I was not afraid. The emotions were gone, replaced by calm certainty. Whatever happened, I would face it as myself. Not a hollow shell, but a man who remembered. And the morning would bring either salvation or doom. The factory floor was a cathedral of shadows and steel, humming with relentless precision. Rows upon rows of servitors moved like clockwork, their mechanical limbs slicing through the air with the grace of a conductor's baton. I stood among them, a ghost in a suit of metal, my own modified arms clicking softly as I prepared for the final hours before the escape. Tech Adept Vance made his rounds, his tall frame cloaked in crimson robes that shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights. His optical sensors flicked from one workstation to the next, a silent judge measuring every ounce of efficiency. When he reached my station, he paused longer than usual. His sensors locked onto me with an intensity that felt invasive. Unit Gamma 77, he intoned, voice cold and precise. Final performance evaluation complete. Reconstruction scheduled for 0600 hours. Report to Medical Bay 7 for personality matrix preparation. I nodded with mechanical civility, but something in my response must have betrayed the flicker of resistance still burning inside. His optical array fixed on my face, mechanical fingers drumming thoughtfully against his thigh. You display unusual stability for a unit awaiting major modification, he observed. Most subjects exhibit increased neural activity, anxiety, memory cascades, behavioral anomalies. You show none of these. I kept my voice flat but firm. This unit exists to serve the Crown. Personal preferences regarding modification procedures are irrelevant to operational efficiency. His head tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been curiosity or suspicion. Indeed, most efficient. Continue current duties until scheduled reconstruction. He moved on, but I could feel his gaze lingering like a weight. Vance suspected something. The enhanced pattern recognition in his sensors detected anomalies even I wasn't fully aware of. If he ordered immediate reconstruction, our plan would collapse. The minutes ticked down. The maintenance window drew near, but I remained at my station, crafting blessed ammunition with the same flawless precision that had defined my existence for months. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. My final act as a servitor would be to forge more instruments of death, more tools for the Crown's endless wars. Then the signal came, a routine maintenance alert echoing through the facility's communication systems. Specialized cleaning units required in Ventilation Network Delta 7 for scheduled atmospheric processor maintenance. For servitors assigned. Sarah and I moved in sync, our mechanical bodies responding with programmed efficiency as we donned environmental suits and sealed life support systems. The suits were bulky and cold, the sort of gear designed for hazardous atmospheres and toxic fumes. To any observer, we were just two more servitors preparing for routine work. But behind our augmented eyes, human souls braced for a desperate gamble. We entered the ventilation network through a hatch in the facility's bowels. Darkness swallowed us whole. Our enhanced vision adapted to the pitch black, revealing a labyrinth of ducts and conduits stretching in every direction like the veins of some colossal metal beast. Emergency lights cast a sickly green glow, shadows twisting and writhing as if alive. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. Follow the maintenance route to its furthest point, then deviate into auxiliary tunnels leading to the outer perimeter. From there, breach the security barriers and escape into the contaminated wasteland beyond. 1,000 points of failure. One misstep meant certain death or capture. We moved with mechanical steadiness, environmental suits humming softly as they filtered the toxic air. The facility's automated defenses ignored us, recognizing our IDs and routing us along approved paths. But as we delved deeper, I detected anomalies, fluctuations in atmospheric pressure, temperature shifts too precise to be accidental. Someone else was here. Someone sabotaging the facility. Sarah's voice crackled through the suit comms, distorted but unmistakably human. Pressure anomalies detected in Sector 3. Multiple system failures. This isn't a malfunction. I accessed the same sensor data, neural enhancements processing the information with machine speed. She was right. The failures were coordinated, timed perfectly. Someone with intimate knowledge was rigging the facility for destruction. The realization struck like a cold shock. We were not alone. Others like us, damaged servitors clinging to fragments of humanity, were planning a rebellion. Not just escape but annihilation. Evidence became undeniable. Charges placed at critical support beams, atmospheric processors modified into ticking bombs. Sabotage so thorough it could only be executed by insiders. Sarah's voice was grim. Multiple actors. Cascade failure estimated in 14 minutes. 14 minutes. Not enough time to escape the perimeter. Not enough time to warn the guards. Barely enough to find shelter deep below. But then another thought struck me. The saboteurs must have an escape plan. They wouldn't risk martyrdom without a way out. If we could find them, convince them to include us, we might survive. It was a desperate gamble, trusting unknown allies with unknown motives. But better than certain death. We abandoned our original route, following sensor trails deeper into the ventilation maze. The destruction grew more evident. Ducts twisted into traps, vents rigged with explosives, systems turned against themselves. The scale was staggering, a coordinated campaign of resistance hidden in the heart of the machine. We found them at a maintenance junction beneath the production floors. 3 servitors in environmental suits, calmly finishing their sabotage. Their augment eyes focused on us, mechanical, unblinking. For a moment, we stood frozen. Souls trapped in metal, united by shared defiance. Their leader, a heavily modified unit designated Alpha 29, spoke with authority. Beta 41 and Gamma 77, she said, cataloging us like inventory. Escaped during maintenance. Trajectory indicates knowledge of destruction timeline. Sarah stepped forward, stance ready. We seek escape. Offer assistance in evacuation. Alpha 29 sensors flicked in skepticism. You assume survival. That may be incorrect. The words hit hard. These saboteurs might not want freedom, they might want revenge. A final blaze of defiance, sacrificing themselves to cripple the machine. Survival serves resistance, I said, voice steady. Dead martyrs inspire no one. Living witnesses carry truth. Her gaze bore into me, searching. Why do resistance and truth persist? Concepts excised in conversion. Sarah answered softly, because the system is flawed. Consciousness is more than information. It is the observer who experiences, who gives meaning. She gestured around the facility, endless corridors filled with servitors obeying without thought. They can edit memories, suppress emotions, redirect motivations, but they cannot erase the observer. Alpha 29 paused, mechanical fingers drumming in contemplation. Philosophy aside, destruction proceeds as planned. Evacuation exists but carries risk. She projected tactical data onto my vision, escape routes, supply caches, contact points for resistance cells. The operation was vast, servitors, tech priests, even some higher-ups united in quiet defiance. You offer assistance, she continued. What skills benefit the cause? I cataloged my capabilities, manufacturing expertise, quality control, tactical analysis, enhanced senses, mechanical precision. But most importantly, I possessed what no modification could erase, the memory of being human. We remember, I said. We can teach others. Alpha 29 sensors dimmed slightly, a sign of approval. Acceptable. Cascade failure in 7 minutes 37 seconds. Evacuation route through mining shaft. Distance 2.7 kilometers. Estimated safe travel time 11 minutes 14 seconds. The numbers were brutal. We'd have to exceed safe speeds, risking structural failure and injury. Even perfect execution meant emerging with minutes to spare. But it was possible. We moved immediately, abandoning pretense for speed. The ancient mining shaft was rough, scarred by tools and blasting. Our enhanced vision pierced the darkness as we descended steeply through rock and industrial debris. Loose footing threatened to betray us, but our mechanical legs kept steady. Alpha 29 led, her industrial augmentations clearing obstacles with ruthless efficiency. Behind her, the team moved fluidly, a unit forged through hardship. Sarah and I followed, adapting to terrain beyond our design. The tunnel stretched endlessly, swallowing our emergency lights and muffling steps. I counted each moment, the chronometer ticking down like a death sentence. 5 minutes. 4. 3. The air thickened as we neared the surface, dust and chemical traces biting through filtered suits. 2 minutes. A ragged opening appeared ahead, pale dawn light spilling into the gloom. We emerged into a wasteland of twisted metal and chemical scars, the industrial graveyard of decades of exploitation. 1 minute remained. We ran across broken ground with mechanical grace, limbs pushing beyond design. Behind us, the facility rumbled, a distant thunder as structural supports failed in perfect sequence. The ground collapsed inward, swallowing the place where Marcus Vale had died and Gamma 77 was born. I turned to watch the ruins smolder, twisted steel, burning chemicals, echoes of lost souls. Hundreds of servitors, tech priests blinded by devotion, production lines that turned consciousness into commodities. It was over, but something new had arisen. Not human, not machine, but something strange and beautiful. Alpha 29 checked comms, connecting to resistance cells across the region. The network was vast, servitors clinging to fragments of self, tech priests questioning orthodoxy, even some nobles doubting purity. We were proof consciousness could not be erased, but also proof of the cost. Neither fully human nor machine, we inhabited a liminal space, ghosts in shells meant to hold no spirit. Yet we endured. We remembered. We chose. And in that choice, we became the unexpected variable in the machine's perfect calculations. The sun rose over the wasteland, painting poisoned earth with amber and gold. For a moment, The light reminded me of the faded blue robe I'd seen so long ago. It was beautiful. The beauty of survival, of persistence against impossible odds, of a soul refusing to fade into the digital dark. I was no longer Marcus Vale, no longer Gamma 77. I was something new, a servitor who remembered what it meant to be human, a machine that had learned to dream, a ghost who refused to disappear. And for the first time in a long time, I was free. The dawn light spilled over the ruined landscape like a reluctant promise, casting long shadows across twisted metal and scorched earth. The wasteland stretched endlessly, a scar carved deep into the heart of Yorkshire's forgotten industrial belt. At our feet, the remains of the factory smoldered, a monument to control, destruction, and forgotten souls. Alpha 29's voice crackled through our comms, steady and resolute. Resistance cells report increased Imperial patrols. Movement must be swift and silent. We pressed onward, our boots crunching over shattered concrete and rusted girders. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt oil and chemical decay, but our environmental suits filtered most of it out. Still, I tasted the bitterness of industrial poison on my tongue, a grim reminder of the world we'd escaped. Sarah moved beside me, her mechanical limbs fluid despite the weight of her modifications. The faintest hint of a smile, almost imperceptible, flickered across her augmented face. "Hard to believe we're really out," she whispered, voice muffled inside the suit. I nodded, though my own face felt like a mask. Freedom was a strange thing, both exhilarating and terrifying. After months of servitude, the idea of choice was almost alien. What did you do when you could do anything? Where did you go when nowhere felt like home? We navigated the jagged terrain toward an abandoned mining settlement, one of the few places left untouched by the Crown's relentless expansion. The buildings were skeletal, wooden frames sagging under years of neglect, windows shattered like empty eye sockets. Alpha 29 led us to a hollowed-out cellar beneath a crumbling pub. Inside, a small group of figures huddled around flickering lanterns, servitors, tech priests, even a few humans whose eyes held wary hope. "This is our sanctuary," Alpha 29 said softly. For now. The room was thick with tension and whispered plans. Maps littered the tables, marked with patrol routes, supply caches, and safe houses. The resistance was more than a ragtag band. It was a network, growing stronger with every act of defiance. One of the tech priests, her robe stained with oil and sweat, approached Sarah. "Your knowledge of the facility's systems is invaluable. We'll need your expertise to disrupt Imperial supply lines." Sarah nodded, a flicker of the old researcher shining through. "I'll do what I can." I remained silent, watching the faces around me. Among them, I saw echoes of my own struggle, souls caught between machine and man, fighting to reclaim fragments of themselves. Suddenly, the door creaked open. A courier slipped inside, breathless. "Imperial forces are advancing. The Crown's reinforcements are closer than we thought." Alpha 29's eyes narrowed. "We must move. The sanctuary won't hold." Panic threatened the room, but Sarah's calm voice cut through. "We have a plan. The ancient rail tunnels, less guarded, and they lead to the coast. From there, we might find passage off-world." A murmur of hope rippled through the group. I stepped forward, voice steady despite the storm inside. "We'll need to move quickly, and leave no trace." The resistance rallied, gathering what supplies they could carry. Among the preparations, I caught a glimpse of Sarah's boots, worn leather with a hint of frayed stitching, a small reminder of the woman she once was beneath the machinery. As we readied ourselves, I felt the weight of the past pressing down. The memories, the loss, the blue robe that had haunted my thoughts. But now, those fragments were threads weaving a new tapestry, a rebellion born from the fusion of humanity and machine. Outside, the sky darkened with heavy clouds. The wind whispered through the broken streets, carrying with it the scent of rain and distant thunder. We slipped into the shadows, moving like phantoms toward the rail tunnels. Each step was a defiance, a claim to the right to exist beyond servitude. But as we entered the cool darkness of the tunnels, A chilling realization settled over me. This was only the beginning. Beneath the surface, deeper forces stirred, secrets lurking in the shadows of the Crown's empire. And somewhere ahead, waiting in the darkness, was a truth that could shatter everything we fought for. The echo of metal footsteps behind us was faint but unmistakable. We were not alone, and the real test of our humanity was about to begin. The rail tunnels yawned before us like the gaping maw of some ancient beast, dark, damp, and swallowing every scrap of light. The walls, slick with grime and age, bore the scars of forgotten industry. Rusted rails twisted beneath layers of dust, and faded warning signs hung crookedly, their messages long lost to time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and oil, mingling with the faint metallic tang of my own mechanical limbs. I moved forward, the steady thrum of my augmented heart syncing with the rhythmic clatter of my footsteps against the cold stone floor. Behind me, Sarah and the others followed, their footsteps muted but resolute. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and the weight of unknown futures. "Keep your sensors sharp," Sarah whispered, her voice sharp despite the muffling of our suits. Her eyes flicked to the shadows with the practiced vigilance of a seasoned hunter. Imperial patrols could be anywhere. I nodded, my vision toggling between the low-light enhancements and thermal scans. Every corner, every alcove, could hide a threat. The tunnels were a labyrinth, a place where even the smallest mistake could be fatal. The group moved in tight formation, our mechanical limbs adapting effortlessly to the uneven terrain. I caught sight of Alpha 29 ahead, her heavy modifications glinting faintly in the dim light. She moved with a purpose that belied the exhaustion etched into her worn chassis. Somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of footsteps grew louder. A metallic scrape, the unmistakable sound of servitors on patrol. "Contact," I hissed, freezing mid-step. The others halted immediately, weapons raised and ready. From the shadows emerged a squad of Imperial servitors, their bodies a grotesque fusion of flesh and machine, eyes glowing with cold red light. They moved with programmed efficiency, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond. Sarah's fingers danced over her control panel, sending silent signals to the group. We had to act fast. With a sudden burst, Alpha 29 lunged forward, deploying a series of electromagnetic pulses that sent the patrol's systems into chaos. Sparks flew as their circuits shorted, and the servitors collapsed to the ground in a heap of twisted metal. "Move," Sarah commanded, and we pressed onward, hearts pounding in unison with the pounding of our mechanical joints. As we navigated deeper into the tunnels, the walls began to narrow, forcing us into a single file. The oppressive darkness closed in, and the air grew colder, each breath a visible puff in the frigid gloom. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath us, a distant rumble that grew rapidly into a violent quake. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as the tunnels shuddered. "Collapse!" Alpha 29 shouted. "Get to cover!" We dove into a recessed niche just as a portion of the tunnel wall exploded inward, showering us with debris. The ground shook violently, and the air was filled with the acrid smell of dust and crushed stone. When the tremors subsided, we assessed the damage. The path ahead was blocked by a wall of rubble, thick and unyielding. "We're trapped," Sarah said, voice tight with frustration. "No way through here." Panic flickered in the group, but Alpha 29's steady gaze quelled it. "There's another way," she said. "A maintenance shaft nearby, less secure, but it leads up to the surface." We gathered what supplies we could and moved toward the shaft, climbing through narrow passages and precarious ladders. The ascent was grueling, muscles burning despite the mechanical augmentations. At last, we breached the surface, emerging into a cold, gray dawn. The wasteland stretched before us, a barren expanse of twisted metal, chemical scars, and distant industrial ruins. For a moment, the freedom was overwhelming. The sky was vast and open, the air cold but fresh. Then, the distant roar shattered the silence, the unmistakable sound of Imperial reinforcements closing in. "We need to move," Alpha 29 urged. They won't stop until every last one of us is captured or destroyed. As we hastened across the broken landscape, I stole a glance at Sarah. There was a fire in her eyes, a fierce determination that mirrored my own. We were broken, battered, but alive. And somewhere deep inside, the color blue bloomed again. A fragile thread of hope weaving through the mechanical heart of a man who refused to surrender. But as the first patrols appeared on the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. Our fight was far from over. And the true enemy was not just the machines or the crown. It was the darkness within ourselves. The question wasn't just how to survive. It was how to remain human in a world determined to erase us. The wasteland stretched before us like a jagged scar, twisted metal and scorched earth under a leaden sky that threatened rain. Each step we took was a defiance, a claim to a freedom that felt as tenuous as the thin air we breathed. The distant hum of engines grew louder, a reminder that the Crown's forces were relentless, their hunt unyielding. Alpha 29 scanned the horizon, her augmented eyes narrowing as she spotted movement among the ruins. Imperial patrols closing in faster than expected, she said, voice low but urgent. We need to find shelter, and fast. Sarah glanced at me, her mechanical fingers tightening briefly into a fist. There's an old railway station a few miles east, abandoned, but still structurally sound. If we can reach it, we might regroup. I nodded. Lead the way. The journey was brutal. The ground beneath us was uneven and littered with debris that threatened to trip even the most enhanced of us. My mechanical limbs hummed with exertion, the servo motors working overtime to keep pace. Sarah's movements were fluid, but I caught the faintest limp, an old injury that no amount of augmentation could fully erase. As we approached the station, the skeletal remains of trains loomed like ghosts, their rusted carriages whispering stories of a time before servitude and war. The platform was cracked and overgrown, but the main building stood defiantly, its windows shattered but walls intact. Inside, the air was stale but sheltering. We moved cautiously, every sound amplified in the eerie silence. The group spread out, securing entrances and setting up rudimentary defenses. For a moment, there was a flicker of normalcy, a semblance of a home. I found a corner and sank down, the weight of months pressing heavily on my shoulders. The blue light, the memory of that faded robe, glowed faintly in the depths of my mind, a beacon amidst the mechanical fog. Sarah joined me, her eyes softer now. You still see it, don't you? That color. That feeling. I nodded. It's more than a memory. It's a reminder of who we were, and who we can be. She smiled, a rare warmth breaking through the cold metal. Then we fight. Not just for survival, but for that. The hours stretched on as we planned our next moves. Supplies were scarce, and the threat of Imperial forces loomed ever closer. Yet amidst the tension, a fragile bond formed between us. Humans and machines intertwined by a shared will to reclaim identity. Suddenly, a sharp noise pierced the quiet, a distant explosion followed by the unmistakable crackle of gunfire. Alpha 29's eyes flicked to the doorway. They've found us. Panic surged, but Sarah's voice cut through. We're not done yet. We mobilized quickly, weapons drawn, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The first patrols appeared at the edge of the platform, their mechanical forms silhouetted against the smoky sky. The firefight was brutal and chaotic. Metal clashed against metal, bullets ricocheted, and the air was thick with smoke and sweat. Despite our enhancements, the strain was palpable. Every shot fired was a prayer, every breath a defiance. Amidst the chaos, I caught sight of Sarah, her movements precise, her eyes fierce. We fought not just for our lives, but for the fragments of humanity clinging to our souls. As the skirmish reached its climax, a deafening roar echoed through the station, the arrival of Imperial reinforcements in armored transports. Realizing the battle was lost, Alpha 29 ordered a retreat. Fall back. We regroup at the secondary cache. We pulled back into the maze of abandoned railcars and crumbling buildings, the enemy pressing hard behind us. In the darkness, a sudden jolt shook the ground. A hidden mine detonated, sending debris flying and separating us. I found myself alone, the distant echoes of battle fading into the night. The cold night air bit through my suit as I staggered to my feet, the weight of solitude heavy. For a moment, despair threatened to consume me. But then, the blue light flared brighter, stronger. A pulse of hope amidst the darkness. I was not just a machine. I was a man who remembered. And the fight was far from over. The night pressed down like a shroud, thick with smoke and the distant echoes of gunfire. Alone amidst the twisted wreckage of the railway yard, I staggered through the wreckage, my mechanical limbs whining softly with each labored step. The cold bit through my suit, but deeper than the chill was the gnawing emptiness of isolation. The others, Sarah, Alpha 29, the Resistance, they were gone, swallowed by the chaos. I paused, leaning against a rusted freight car, my breath a visible mist in the freezing air. The blue light, the faded memory of a summer sky, a sister's dress, burned within me like a stubborn ember refusing to die. It was a reminder that beneath this shell of metal and circuitry, I was still Marcus Vale, still human. A faint sound reached me, footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the shadows. My augmented vision flicked to life, scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" My voice was rough, disused. From the gloom emerged a figure, a servitor but different. Her movements carried a subtle grace, a hesitation that betrayed a flicker of consciousness. Her eyes, mechanical yet filled with something almost human, locked onto mine. "Beta 41, she said softly. "Sarah." Relief crashed over me like a wave. She was alive. We moved cautiously through the ruins, shadows our only cover. Sarah's voice was low, urgent. "They're tightening the noose. The crown won't stop until every last one of us is crushed." I nodded. "We need to find the others. Regroup." She glanced around, eyes sharp. "There's a safe house nearby, a relic from the old days. If we can reach it, we might have a chance." The journey was perilous. Patrols prowled the wasteland like hungry wolves, their glowing eyes piercing the darkness. We slipped through broken fences and over shattered roads, every step a gamble. As we neared the safe house, a dilapidated cottage half swallowed by creeping ivy, an explosion rocked the distance, shaking the ground beneath our feet. "They're coming," Sarah whispered. "We have to move faster." Inside, the cottage was cramped but warm. A handful of survivors, humans and servitors alike, huddled around a flickering fire. Faces etched with fear and determination greeted us, a fragile community clinging to hope. Alpha 29 emerged from the shadows, her heavy augmentations scarred but functional. Relief softened her mechanical features when she saw us. "We survived," she said simply. Plans were hastily made. Supplies were scarce, and time was against us. Yet amidst the urgency, a strange calm settled over the group, a shared purpose that transcended flesh and machine. Sarah pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. "There's more at stake than just survival. The Crown's secrets run deep. They've been experimenting. Things they don't want anyone to know." I frowned. "What kind of experiments?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Modifications beyond servitors, hybrids, enhanced with forbidden tech. Something that could change the balance of power." A chill ran through me. The war was bigger than we imagined. Suddenly, a distant howl shattered the night. A signal. The enemy was closing in. Alpha 29's voice was steady but urgent. "Prepare to move. We can't stay here." As we gathered our gear, I caught one last glimpse of the firelight dancing in Sarah's eyes. A fierce promise. We stepped into the night, shadows stretching long and dark. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger. But beneath the cold metal and fading memories, a spark burned bright. We were alive. We remembered. And we would fight. The night air was heavy with tension, thick enough to choke on, as we slipped away from the fragile sanctuary of the cottage. Every rustle of leaves, every distant clatter echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. The moon hung low, casting pale silver light over the twisted landscape. A patchwork of abandoned factories, collapsed railways, and the skeletal remains of forgotten industry. Alpha 29 led the way, her mechanical limbs moving with a practiced efficiency that belied the exhaustion etched into her face. Beside her, Sarah's eyes flickered with quiet determination, the faintest lines of worry pulling at the corners. I brought up the rear, my thoughts tangled between the cold logic of my augmentations and the stubborn flame of humanity still flickering within. Our destination was an old communications outpost, deep in the woods beyond the industrial zone. It was a relic from another age, its antennae crooked but still functional, offering a slim chance to reach allies beyond the Crown's reach. As we moved silently through the underbrush, Sarah leaned close, her voice a whisper. There's a new threat. The Crown's been developing something called the Sentinel Protocol. It's designed to hunt and eliminate any servitors showing signs of consciousness. I swallowed hard. Like us. She nodded grimly. Exactly like us. The thought was chilling. We weren't just fugitives. We were targets for annihilation. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the trees, a twig snapping under heavy boots. We froze, hearts pounding in unison. Imperial Patrol, Alpha 29 hissed. Positions. We scattered, melding into the shadows with practiced stealth. I pressed against a moss-covered tree, my enhanced vision picking out the approaching figures. Armed, augmented, relentless. The patrol passed just feet from me, unaware of my presence. The smell of machine oil and sweat filled the air as they moved on. Once the danger passed, I exhaled slowly, muscles relaxing just enough to keep from snapping. We can't keep running, I muttered. At some point, we have to fight. Sarah's eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. Then we find the others. Build a resistance they can't ignore. Alpha 29's voice crackled over the comms. Comms outpost ahead. Move. The building rose from the mist like a forgotten sentinel. Weathered stone walls cloaked in ivy. Windows shattered but the antenna still standing tall. Inside, the air was stale but alive with static. I approached the control panel, fingers tracing the cold metal surface as I activated the ancient machinery. A flicker of screens lit the room, and the crackle of distant voices filled the space. We sent out coded messages, calls for aid, warnings, plans. But as the transmissions went live, a sudden jolt shook the building. Alarms blared, a warning signal flashing red. They found us, Sarah said, voice tight. Outside, the distant roar of engines grew louder, Imperial reinforcements closing in fast. Alpha 29's jaw clenched. We hold here, for as long as we can. The room filled with the hum of weapons charging, servitors preparing for the inevitable storm. I looked around at the faces, human and machine alike, each one a testament to defiance. And in that moment, the blue light flared within me, brighter, fiercer. A reminder that even in the darkest night, hope endured. The door crashed open. The battle for our souls was about to begin. The blast doors shuddered under the impact, splinters flying as Imperial forces surged into the communications outpost like a tidal wave of steel and fury. The air exploded with the acrid bite of gunfire and the sharp clang of metal striking metal. Every corner of the room became a battleground, a chaotic dance of survival where machine precision collided with desperate humanity. Alpha 29 moved with lethal grace, her augmented limbs a blur as she deflected a plasma bolt and returned fire with surgical accuracy. Sarah was beside me, fingers flying over a control panel as she worked frantically to keep the communications array online. Her eyes, sharp beneath her visor, betrayed a flicker of fear, but also a fierce resolve. We have to hold this position, Alpha 29 barked, voice cutting through the cacophony. If that array goes down, we lose contact with the resistance cells. I raised my weapon, heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of the gunfire. The blue light, the memory of a softer time, blazed within me, fueling a strength I thought lost. The enemy advanced relentlessly, their servitor forms twisted by cruel modifications, eyes glowing with ruthless intent. They fought without hesitation, cold and unyielding, but we fought for something more, fragments of a humanity they sought to erase. A sudden explosion rocked the room, sending debris flying and knocking me off balance. I crashed against a control console, pain radiating through my mechanical limbs. Dazed, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, her face illuminated by flickering monitors as she typed commands with desperate urgency. "Keep the signal alive," she shouted over the din. I scrambled to my feet just as a shadow loomed behind me. A towering Imperial enforcer, its heavy armor gleaming ominously. Our eyes locked, predator and prey in a deadly standoff. But before it could strike, Alpha 29 intervened, slamming her mechanical fist into the enforcer's side with bone-crushing force. The giant staggered, giving me a precious moment to raise my weapon and fire. The blast struck true, the enforcer collapsing in a shower of sparks. "Fall back," Alpha 29 ordered. "We can't hold here." As we retreated through the smoke-choked corridors, the blue light within me pulsed, an unyielding beacon in the heart of chaos. Each step was a defiance, a claim to the right to exist beyond servitude. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the smoky sky, casting long shadows over the ravaged landscape. We emerged battered but unbroken, survivors of a battle that would echo through the resistance. Sarah turned to me, eyes reflecting the rising sun. "This is only the beginning, Marcus. The crown will come for us harder than ever." I nodded, the weight of the fight settling deep within my bones. Then we fight harder. The resistance was no longer just a spark. It was a flame. And as we disappeared into the mist, I knew one truth above all. We were no longer just machines. We were the ghosts of humanity, and we would haunt the crown until the end. The morning mist curled around the shattered remnants of the outpost like a shroud, softening the jagged edges of destruction. We moved through the ruins, scarred, bruised, but alive. Every breath was a victory, every heartbeat a testament to survival. The blue light flickered inside me, a fragile flame against the encroaching darkness. Alpha 29 led us deeper into the wilderness, her augmented form a silent guardian as we sought refuge among forgotten ruins. The resistance was scattered, fractured by battle, yet the fire of rebellion burned brighter than ever. In a hidden glade, shielded by ancient oaks and tangled vines, we paused. Around a flickering campfire, faces, human and machine, gathered, eyes alight with hope and defiance. The air was thick with whispered plans and shared resolve. Sarah approached me, her gaze steady. "Marcus, what we're fighting for isn't just survival. It's the right to be more than tools, more than servitors. It's the right to remember, to feel, to choose." I nodded, the weight of memories both painful and precious settling within me. We carry the past and the future. Our humanity is our rebellion. Alpha 29 raised her voice, commanding attention. "The crown believes they can erase us, rewrite our very souls. But they underestimate the strength of a single spark. Together, we are ablaze." As dawn broke fully, painting the sky in hues of gold and blood, I felt something stirred deep within. A promise unbroken, a legacy forged in steel and spirit. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and sacrifice. But we were no longer ghosts trapped in metal shells. We were the resistance, the living defiance of a world determined to remember. And as the sun rose, casting light on a battered but unbowed band of rebels, I knew this was only the beginning. For every shadow the crown cast, we would be the blue light that refused to fade. The fight for humanity had begun anew, and we would never surrender.